Hello and welcome to Gupta's webinar on 360-degree .NET debugging. This is your host, Martin Tietz. Before we get started, I want to review a few things about Gupta Technologies. We are known for being the first to deliver a software development environment for Windows, which was SQL Windows in 1989. Since then, we have delivered development software products that run across different databases and platforms, geared to building and modernizing business applications, and to the business application developer who places a premium on productivity over low-level coding. Today, Team Developer allows building and deploying Win32 and .NET multi-tier applications. We do encourage questions on the webinar, and the way you do that is to use the Q&A button on your WebEx toolbar. It is the button with the question mark. There's also a chat button, but it makes it easier for me to look in one panel for the questions to make sure I address all of them. And now let's look at what this webinar is all about. We recently released Team Developer 6.2 and have enhanced Team Developer in three major areas. One is the IDE with the headline Fun and Productivity, more productivity and more fun to work with the new TD IDE. The other one is more .NET Power and SQL Windows Application Language Power, which a part of this we will be talking about today. And then Beauty and Functionality, which adds a lot of new controls and new GUI capabilities to your Team Developer applications, like the new ribbon bar. So we are talking about more .NET features and other powerful APIs. When we were planning .NET debugging, our goal was to allow debugging of every aspect and or component of a Team Developer .NET application, even when Team Developer .NET components are being included in other .NET languages projects. So for example, in CSharp projects. And when non-TD.NET components are being used from TD. So like when you have a TD.NET project and you're including CSharp class libraries into your TD.NET application. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. How Debugging.NET apps works. Then we will look at Debugging.NET apps that include TD.NET Sal Libraries. Sal Libraries are the APDs on .NET, which are libraries that contain GUI objects. So basically, libraries that can contain table windows with whatever windows you have and business logic that you can call from a calling application. Debugging.NET apps that include CSharp assemblies. I will show you how to debug CSharp assemblies from within TD apps. Debugging.NET Web Services provider. So I will show you how to debug a web service provider that is being consumed from a browser interface, for example. Debugging CSharp apps that include TD.NET assemblies. So that's the other way around. You have a CSharp project and you want to include a TD.NET assembly and you want to debug that project, including debugging the TD code from your Visual Studio IDE, for example. So this is what I'm going to talk about and going to show you in this webinar. Debugging.NET applications. In general, Debugging.NET applications is just like debugging Win32 apps. You have the same tools available from your Team Developer IDE, like variable inspection windows, expression evaluation window, breakpoints, and all these things. With TD 6.2 debugging, .NET applications must be in 32-bit mode because that's how we can interact with the .NET application on a debugger basis. If you want to deploy 64-bit applications for debugging, you need to run those in 32-bit mode, but you can certainly then deploy them in 64-bit .NET mode. So here's the first thing: Debugging.NET applications. This. You build a Team Developer .NET Sal library, and you build that with the debug mode checked in the build settings. You then do include your new Sal library into a TD.NET application via the .NET Explorer. And then you call the windows and classes in that Sal library from your team developer.net application. So for debugging, you open the source code of your Sal library. You then run the TD.NET application, the TD.NET application, to start debugging. So this is the main application that then will call the Sal library, and you have the Sal library open in source code in another window. In that team developer window of the Sal library, you then need to attach to the TD.NET application so that team developer knows who is the calling application. Then you can set breakpoints in Sal library and just continue debugging like you do, for example, with ActiveX servers and clients. So here in the build settings, you have a .NET application. You set it to a .NET Sal library, which can contain GUI controls. Important is to set the build type to debug so that certain debug information is available to process at when you want to debug your class library. The .NET Explorer wizard, this will show you what components are available in your .NET Sal library, like this grid company window, which I want to include in my main application from a .NET Sal library. And then when I open the attach to process menu from the debug menu, then you get this window where you need to choose the main application that is calling the .NET Sal library for debugging purposes. And then you just continue debugging like you always did debug team developer code. You see here we are stopping at a breakpoint. We are evaluating variable contents, and you see this exclamation mark underscore exported indicates that this is a GUI object that can be called from an external application. So let's look at this in real team developer. Debugging.NET Sal library. Open the Sal library code. So here it is, and go back here and start the calling TD.NET application. So I do already have an exe that I will launch now that will call the windows or the window in that .NET Sal library. So here's the exe that will, actually that window is already coming from the Sal library, this grid window here. So now in the Sal library code, I go into debug, attach to process, and I get that here. And this is my TD calling application. I attach to it. So now those two are linked together, and I can go in here and, for example, set a breakpoint when I do fill that grid control here. And now let's go back to the main application and press select for the grid. And now you will see that in the Sal library, we are stopping at the breakpoint. And here's my expressions window where I can, for example, check the content of variables. So HSQL, SQL handle connected. That's where I can start debugging. I can step in, step out, continue, go to next selected line, and all these things that you can do in TD debugging. I press continue here. Then you will see that in the main window, the data gets fetched, and the grid is filled with data from the database. So this is an example of how to debug .NET Sal libraries that are being called from a main TD.NET application. Let's close this. Debugging .NET apps with C# assemblies. Process. You include your C# assemblies via the team developer .NET Explorer. This must be a 32-bit assembly for debugging. the C# assembly you are using needs to be built in debug mode in your Visual Studio environment probably. The source code of the C# assembly needs to be present in the Team Developer Application directory. And the PDB file, which is the debug information file of the C# assembly, needs to be present in the Team Developer Application directory as well. So if you have all these things in place, then you can go ahead and do things. Do this. So now let me start Team Developer, and in this application I did include actually a C# assembly, and the definition of that C# assembly is contained in that simple.net assembly.axl file. This file contains all the definitions of the classes that I can call from my Team Developer application. And you see here that I do have a window variable simple.net assembly my class and then my .net class. And in the contents, I actually this external assembly basically does a string concatenation. It concatenates the string of data field 1 and data field 2 and puts the result into data field 3. I think that's what that push button here does. So exactly. And what I want to do now is put a breakpoint here and run this application. And now it stops here. The results are not there yet. And oh yeah, I need to press the button to get going. I press the button and you see it stops at the breakpoint here. And now I can step into, and now you see that it steps into the C# code. It opens the C# code, and now you can step through the C# code. That's of course nicer with a larger monitor or 2 monitors. But you see the selected line in the C# code, and you can step through this code in C#. So basically, this string concatenation here in C# that has been done. Now continue once more, and here is the result. So this is what has been coming from C#, and you saw that that I did step through the C# code here to debug the mixed code application, if you will. So let's have a quick look at the C# assembly. I'm not using Visual Studio. I'm actually using an open source product which is called Sharp Develop. And this is basically all I can do in C# is concatenating strings. So basically, this class passes in a string, passes in another string, and returns the concatenated string. This is what it does. So this is what I've done here, and let me show you the build settings. The build settings are debug. That's important here, and you really need to have a debug version of your C# library for that to work. Okay, let's look at this one here. Debugging Botnet Web Service Provider. The process is this one here. You create a TD.NET Web Service with multiple operations or one operation, whatever you need. You also need to use the debug build settings in the Team Developer.NET Web Service. You need to deploy the web service to your IIS server. You need to copy the Team Developer source and the PDB debug information file that Team Developer creates when you build a web service library, including debug settings. And you need to copy that file to the web services bin directory for all this to work. So continue it. Then with web service, there's one special thing, is that for being able to step through the code of web service and debug web service code, you need to launch Team Developer as administrator. because the web services process is running with a different user, or let's say a different Windows user account. And for them to be able to communicate, you need to launch Team Developer as administrator. Then you open the web service source code from your web services directory. You attach to the web service from Team Developer. You set the breakpoints in your code wherever you need. Then you call the web services from your TD application or browser interface to start debugging. So basically, again, here's the build settings you need. .NET Web Service, DLL, that's at the bottom here of the list. This guy here. And make sure you use the debug setting. And then, sorry for that, that's in German, but start TD as administrator. That's really important. And from the debug menu, you say attach to web service. That's where you create the connection between the running process and the debugging application TD IDE. And then you can start debugging the code of the web service. This is what you see here, stopping at a breakpoint and examining the string sin, which is TD6.2 in this case. Okay, demonstration for debugging TD.NET Web Service Provider. So what I need to do here is, I have no hyperlinks to the files here because I need to launch Team Developer as administrator, otherwise this will not work. So go to the Start menu, do a right click on SQL Windows 6.2, execute as administrator. Yes, I want this to run. And now I need to open the web service code. This one here. This one has, in the class definition, several web services. And you see the operations are basically the methods that are being exposed in a web service to the public. And there's in-out bool, in-out bin, in-out string, and I'm going to use this in-out string here. But before I can use that, you can try one thing here. You see attached to web service is active, and I do that, and it responds with an error here. And that means that I didn't really, or IIS hasn't started the whole application yet, and I need to run this web service once so that IIS is ready to process this. In-out string is the one, TD62, call, and you see it opens a new tab with the results coming back. So it's basically passing back the same string that I was passing in. And now the web service should be running, and I should be able to attach to the web service. Yes, so that was successful. Now I can set a breakpoint here in that web service code, in that provider code, and go back to the browser interface of that and call this. And now you see it's not immediately returning, but it's stopping at the breakpoint here. And I, in TD, can now go ahead and debug the code of that web service while it is being accessed from the outside. So and you have all the TD debugging things available for you to debug this. And if I press continue here, then the web service returns, and you see the string has been returned into your browser window in XML format. So this is how you debug TD.NET Web Services providers. You could, of course, call this web service from a TD application as well. That wouldn't make a difference when you debug this, really. Now, the largest other thing that I can show you is here, debugging CSharp applications that call TD.NET assemblies. So here you do this. You create a Team Developer.NET class library. You build that class library in debug mode in Team Developer. Team Developer will then create a .pdb and a .txt file for debugging. The .pdb contains the debug symbol information, and the .txt file contains the actual Team Developer source code, which then allows you to use that source code or debug that source code from Visual Studio or from Sharp Develop, which I'm using. then you will need to include the class library in your C# project, and you'll debug your C# project, including stepping through TD code from your C# project. So let's debug a C# project that includes C.NET classes. Starting sharp develop is that project I need. And that's just the window definition here. Here's the main code. Basically what I have here is a grid window that is being filled with data, and the data is being passed in from a teamdeveloper.net DLL. And you see here that gupta.td.runtime.system and this one here, island proxy, are the references to the external teamdeveloper.net libraries. Now, basically what I'm doing is I'm opening a new connection to the island database, actually to the island database object, and then here this call islanddbproxy.get all companies then retrieves all the companies from that team developer object, or the team developer class, if you want to call it like that, which is the right term actually. And now I have already set a breakpoint on this row here, and now let me debug this. Now it's being compiled and running in debug mode, and now if I press retrieve island data, then it should stop here at the breakpoint, which it does now. And now I can step into this method, and you'll see now that it opens the team developer code with the current executed line highlighted. And I can just go through the team developer code from your Visual Studio IDE. And now you see it's working through a fetch loop, and I can add watches for variables. And now I will add a watch for a team developer comp error. That's an array of UDV, so pretty complex data structure. And you see I add that here, and you are able to see the data that is in that array of TD UDV from Visual Studio IDE, which is pretty neat, right? Let's continue with that and go back to the calling application. It is. So that data is coming from a teamdeveloper.net DLL, and we have done we stepped through the team developer code, including variable inspection of the TD UDV array from a C# IDE. That is pretty cool, right? So, Team Developer 6.2 summary. Fun and productivity with the updated IDE. A lot more .NET power, like the new .NET debugging features that I did demonstrate today, and a lot more GUI power with new ribbon bars and a lot more other GUI things that help you create exciting looking and very rich and powerful business applications. So here we are for your questions and answers. So put your questions into the Q&A tool, please. All right, it looks like there are no further questions. I would like to thank you for attending this webinar. Go grab a copy of teamdeveloper.net and try this on your own. It's pretty exciting new debugging capabilities that enable real powerful multi-tier applications and multi-development tool applications on multiple programming language applications with a pretty powerful debugging environment included. All right, thank you for attending this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are in the world, and I hope to see you soon in one of the Gupta webinars. Thanks and goodbye.